Video 4, the last video in the bonus video sections. We'll cover the scroll to function, the component variants, and the interactive components. Alright, so let's get back into the file here. And we just wrapped up with the mapping and showing the vertical and horizontal swiping to look like this in the demo. And let's go ahead and drag this start area over to where it says tap to scroll down. And you'll see here if I'm going to go ahead and show this in the prototype. I'm going to press the play here. And what this is you can swipe down to see all the rest of the content. But what we're going to do is we're going to create something where if you tap on this card or you tap on any section, it's going to scroll the user down to the section in which you define. Usually more common, you'll see this in websites when you scroll at the very bottom and there's a button that says like an arrow here that says scroll back up to the top. You'll see that as the same interaction here. And we can even build that here on this for a quick second. Okay, so pretty much let's go ahead and grab the start anchor label over to the prototype here. It's a very, very simple interaction. So we have these 4 cards here. If you press play in the prototype, it just swipes as normal. There's no interaction here. I'm clicking on this card, nothing happens. And all we need to do here is within the artboard itself is I'm going to click on this card. I'm going to drag it. Usually we drag these prototypes to other frames. In this case, I'm going to drag it to another card within the same prototype. Say this section here. And it already knows on tap, scroll to. It will default to that. And it has instant. We don't want instant, but I'm going to show you what instant looks like just so you can avoid it. Okay, so here we tap on the card. And you see it instantly takes the user here, but there was no transition. So we want to have that transition come in. So instead of instant, we want animate. And animate will smoothly scroll the user to that point. So let's go ahead and click on the card again. And you can see it goes back to the card here at the top, or at the bottom. So see that scrolling? It nicely scrolled down. You don't want it to be too long of a scroll. Let's go ahead and say like 20,000 milliseconds here. That's probably too slow. You can see how slow that is. We want a fast, smooth one, so maybe even 500 milliseconds will be just probably good enough. There you go. Nice ease transition there. And then let's go ahead and grab the arrow here where it says you do. I'm going to just copy that. I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to downsize it a little bit, and I'm going to place this at the bottom. Say right here. And we can do the same thing here. We can prototype this arrow to take you back up to the card here. Same function, on tap, scroll to, animate. And now you can see here, we'll go to the bottom. If I click the arrow, it takes me back up to the top. You can see it still has a little bit of room, a card underneath. So what we could do here is let's move this arrow all the way to the top. We can actually group the top bar section here. I'm going to create a frame. I'm going to crop it just a little bit. Alright, and grab the prototype. And let's just pull it all the way to the top of this section here. Now let's see what happens. There you go, back into position. So it didn't hide the card like it did before. Cool, that's pretty much a scroll to function. You can use this for mobile, you can use it for web, but it's most commonly used for either moving down to section per section or scrolling or getting the user all the way back up to the top without having them have to like swipe all the way and keep swiping. Alright, now let's go look a little bit at components and the component variants and interactive components. So this is one of the newest features that came out of Figma recently, and based off the last set of videos in the course, you should know how to make a component. And what this is allowing us to do here, I'm going to demo this page. It's allowing us in one screen to select all the variations. Let's say I wanted to select my different flavor here, and allowing us to do all of these variations in one screen here. And that's called interactive components, but it also uses a feature called component variances, or variants as well. And so we used to have to do this. It kind of looked like this. You had to prototype all these different interactions and possible cases for the user to click on. And so now we got to solve all of that with just one screen here. So let's go look at a variant first, and then we'll look at component variants, or interactive components. So if we go to the component library here, you'll see I have a checkbox system here. So let's make a component variant first. Let's copy both of these over because we're going to need them. So just select those two, go to Command C. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Let's just go to the top here and paste these. So these are already components because you can see how when I click them they're purple. Let's select both of these. Let's right click on them and let's do detach instance. So again, select both of these, right click, and do detach instance. That's going to detach it from the component. Now you can see that they're blue outlines versus purple, which means they're not related to components anymore. They're sort of one-offs. So let's start with the first checkbox here. Let's say, let's change this stroke over, let's just make it a pink stroke, and let's change this text to a darker text like this. So again, I just selected the color here, changed it over to pink, selected yes, and I selected a color from our library. If you don't have the colors here, you can just detach. So I detached the color here. You can see if you hover over, it says detach style, and I can make any color I want. You can do black here. So let's maybe just do black. Okay, so what we first want to do is say this is a good component we want to use, or we want to reuse this checkbox eventually. So let's right click on it, and let's go ahead and make this a component. You can press create component here. You can also do that by clicking this little four square diamond icon at the top, and it will do the same thing. It will create a component. Now what we want to do here is, if you can see on the very right, we have a, when selecting this component, we have a feature called variants. Let's go ahead and press plus on that variant, and it's going to duplicate the checkbox here that we have. And let's call this one active. So we have one that's already default, that's pre-populated for the label. That was already labeled earlier in the file. But this new one, we changed it to active. And let's go ahead and say this is no. And now what we want to do is select, I'm going to triple click until I get to the fill, or the just the rectangle. So triple click, got the rectangle. I'm going to go over to the fill, press plus, and I'm going to grab the pink and make it filled. And then I'm going to copy this checkbox. I'm going to hold Option, and I'm going to drag it into this component here. So I don't need this one anymore. Okay, so now what we can do is we have these two components set. We can go back over to our mobile transition layer here on the pages. And we can drag these components into the file. So if we go to Assets, you'll see all the local components that were in that page layer called Component Library here. And you'll see the new ones that we made because we made them with a darker color here. So you see where it says yes. Let's drag that in here. And what you could do at this point when you're designing is, let's say, I'm going to make this screen, I'm going to delete all of these here. Let's go grab a new one. Let's make the background here just a little lighter so we can see the, let's just go white. And we'll change this over to a darker color. There you go. Okay, so when working with components, we have the default section of this component. But let's say I want to prototype this over, and I want to make this one the selected state. What you could do here is click the yes icon, and you'll see the component area. So I have the yes checkbox. You'll see here it has the component area. Make sure you're on the design tab, not the prototype tab, on the design tab. See where it says checkbox default. And this little drop down has the variant. So I can easily say I want to actually switch this to the active state. And it will change it automatically to the active state. And you can add as many variants as you want. So you can see here when I click on the no, and I'm going to click it back over here, and we load this up. One click changes it to no, another click changes it to yes. So that's pretty much variants in a nutshell. But Figma has launched an even better feature, which is interactive components now. Which before, I'm going to drag the start level over to this screens. So before interactive components, if we wanted an interaction, say for a function in which you choose your gender and you either select male or female, let's say you want to do female and you wanted the user to have a hover state, you'd actually have to create another screen for the hover state. And let's say there was a selected state. You'd actually have to create another screen here for the selective state. So I already have this prototyped. So before interactive components, this is what we'd have to do. We'd have 3 screens to make it look very streamlined and seamless. Like I hover over the female. Again, there's no hover on mobile, but let's say this was for web. And you click, and there's an active state. Right, so 3 states of this button all takes 3 different screens to get that interaction. So now with interactive components, which we'll build out here in a second, we can get one screen that does it all. If I click off of it, it goes back over. So let's go ahead and build that. So if we go over to the section here where it says normal, let's grab this button here. So I'm going to grab it. I'm going to Command G, just go ahead and group it. So let's go ahead and grab this. Let's go back over to our layers here at the top. Make sure you can see your pages here. Sometimes you won't see it because this is in the way, but pull this down, pull your layers down if you need to. Let's go over to our component library. And you can see I've already built this out so you can see how it works, but let's go ahead and do this together. So in the same area where we built out our checkboxes, let's place Command V if you're on a Mac or Control V if you're on a PC. Let's place this female button here, or this selection button here. And now let's get the different states going and start to work with the interactive components. So let's go ahead and make sure we're grouped it, Command G. Let's right click on it. Let's make it a component. So let's create a component. And let's go ahead and look back at our design tab. And let's make sure we call this one. So in the top frame here, I'm going to go triple click in my layers on the left. Call this one the default state. Just so I know when I selected that, that's the default state. and named it. Let's go ahead and select the component here, and let's add the variant. So let's add the first variant here, and let's call this one the hover state. All right, and then you can see I've already grouped this selection here, so let's triple click until we make sure we're on the design tab, so move from the prototype to the design tab. Triple click until we just have the rectangle selected. So we don't want to have the female, the icon here for female, just the rectangle. And where it says stroke on the right hand for the right hand panel, where it says design, let's add a stroke. It defaults to 1 pixel. I'm a fan of keeping your strokes thick. I usually never do 1 pixel strokes. Either 2, 3, most cases 3 or 4 is more common. Just to make it very presentable and apparent. So 1 sometimes can look like a mistake. Like it's too thin. It doesn't look like it's an intentional stroke. So let's be intentional. Let's say 4, and let's go ahead and make this the pink outline here. Okay, so now if we go back and select all of this component with all the variants in it, so see where it says default state, you'll see it has the property 1, default hover state, and it has its own variant section. At this point, you'll see the 3 little menu options here, the 3 little dots in the variants. This is important because this is where we can add more variants. So we add 1 more new variant, and it will add it to the bottom here, and let's call this the selected state. And again, I'm going to select just the background, so triple click until I get that background. Let's make the whole background pink. Let's grab the icon here, let's make it white, and let's change the text from black to white. Okay, so right now we have 3 different buttons that we could use. I'm going to go back to the mobile transition layer here and go into the assets, and we have this button here that we've created, and it has the different variances in it, hover state, selected state, but we haven't prototyped them yet to be interactable, right? We just have the variants set. So let's go back over to our component library, and what we can do now is we can set prototype features within a component. It sounds crazy, but it's very, very easy. Everything that we just did, we're going to apply, but just to the buttons. So let's go ahead and make sure these are all grouped. So we grouped them before. Select the default state of the variant, so you see you're on default. And now go to the prototype tab. And now you can prototype within components. So let's go ahead and drag this prototype arrow over here. And let's say on click is fine. Actually, let's make this one while hovering. It goes to the hover state. And let's not do instant, let's do dissolve. Let's say 300 milliseconds here. So again, I took the top one, I dragged it over to the one that has the stroke, and instead of saying on click, I've done while hovering. And now we're going to do the same one with the one that is the hover state. We're going to click that one, go over to the selected state, and we want this one to be on click, and dissolve will work great. And then we also want somebody to click off of this, the user to click off of the selected one and take you back over to the default state. We want on click and we want dissolve. Okay, so let's delete this one. Let's go ahead and copy this page here. Actually, we don't even need to copy it. Let's delete this button here. Let's go over to our asset library of all our component buttons. And you can see the one here that says default state, one we just made. And you know it's the one we just made because it has the default, the hover state, and the selected state when we go to the Design tab and look at the different variants. And now let's go press play. And you'll see just on the prototype alone the interactive component variants at play. So there's the default state. If you hover, you get that transition to just the stroke, and if you click on it, we get the selected state, and if you click off of this selected state, you can see it goes back to the default state. So again, that's pretty much taking the prototyping that we've done here within this component variant selection and applying those prototypes into just one component for those different interactions. It's been a feature I've been waiting for forever. Again, because to show these type of interactions, it takes so many screens. Just get this screen here. This is what it looked like for a couple years. So it's really great that Figma has introduced this type of feature, and it's a time saver. It's less screens for us to manage, and it's really easy to set up. And you can set that up for pretty much everything. You can do your button styles here. You can see on this one I've created buttons here, and if you prototype this button over here, that's the hover state. So we have the hover state for this button. And so if we went back over to our file here and we went into our assets and we drag this button over here, press play, you can see it has the darker black hover state. And again, it's a button, so what we could do is or it's a component. So what's the great thing about the component is I can use all these different buttons here. I can say this one is save. This one is next. This one is cancel. This one is awesome. And this one is lovely. And I can go back over to my layers. I can go to my components. Let's say I don't want pink anymore. I want to change this color to the blue. And I want to change this hover to, say, a lighter gray here. And now when we go back to our board, you'll see all of the versions of that button change to the blue. And now when we go look at the hover state, you can see it's changed too as well. So it updates all of the different instances or children of that master component all in one swoop and one edit. Okay, there you have it. That's the end of all the bonus videos. As always, thank you so much for taking the classes. I have a couple new classes coming out soon that I will reach out and let everybody know when they launch. And as always, have fun designing and wish you the best. Bye.